Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today we are looking at the Lancer class frigate. Now, this is a capital ship used for anti starfighter operations in the Imperial Navy. Not one that we typically get to see, but one that was designed way back when West End Games was actually in charge of doing the role playing game, and this was kind of brought in during the Thrawn campaigns. All right, so description: the Lancer class frigate was designed and armed with 20 AG 2G quad laser cannons, with at least some of these guns capable of being retracted into the main hull of the vessel. The Lancer was propelled by four drive engines and had a hangar bay area on its ventral side, where it could dock at least two shuttles. In addition, the Lancer had a docking port located on the top of its bow. The ship's bridge was located in the middle of the bow area, below a similar looking computer/sensor control room. All right, historically development and usage. An early type of Lancer class frigate saw its initial deployment a few months after the end of the Clone Wars. Imperial starships had long focused on ship to ship combat capabilities, regulated smaller capital ships on planetary defense rather than picket duty. As Rebel Alliance pilots learned to exploit the major weaknesses of Star Destroyers, commonly called trench run defense, Imperial officers grew increasingly concerned over the growing relative effectiveness of these heavily armed and shielded starfighters. After the first Death Star's destruction at the Battle of Yavin by a handful of Alliance starfighters and the staggering losses suffered at the hands of the Lightspeed Panthers during the Fu Hu campaign. I hope I pronounced it wrong. I'm sure I butcher a lot of these up, but bear with me. All right. That need for far greater starfighter defense was becoming more clear. All right. Admiral Alandez or Dres proposed using the KDY Lancer class ships to screen enemy starfighters to allow dominant star destroyers to pummel enemies in ship to ship combat. This was then approved by the Imperial Naval Command. The final iteration of the craft ran a slim 250 meters with 20 quad laser cannon batteries designed specifically for starfighter hunting. However, this came at a cost of having no capital grade weaponry or shielding, leaving these ships vulnerable to other capital class ships. The ship was also quite slow, allowing many starfighters to simply outrun them. With a high build cost and required a relatively large crew of over 800, the Imperial Starfleet found the Lancer class too expensive for full fleet deployment. A few frigates made it into various fleets, but most admirals preferred to use and subsequently, boy, if I can only speak today, lose their TIE fighters as anti starfighter operations. As a result, most Lancer class frigates, like smaller ships before them, were assigned to planetary defense and rearguard operations, along with interdiction and anti piracy patrols in the Outer Rim territories. All right, from the Imperial Remnant and beyond, it was not until the emergence of Grand Admiral Thrawn in 9 ABY that Lancer class frigates were put to good use. Thrawn used the frigates in raiding missions against key New Republic worlds where they used their laser cannons to slice through the New Republic starfighter based planetary defense. As the remnants of the Empire collapsed and the New Republic defeated the remaining aggressive warlords, a number of the Lancer class frigates were captured by the New Republic Defense Fleet While the Defense Fleet incorporated some of them into planetary defense fleets, most were decommissioned, although the design principles of the Lancer class was revisited with the New Republic's development of the Ranger class gunship. Let's see. Notably, we have Morith Duel used two Lancers to defend Kessel during the Yuzong Vong War. The New Republic recommissioned many Lancer class frigates to use against the Coral Skippers. During the Prime Unu Unthul, uh, trying to pronounce that correctly, commanded one piece of this starship model during the Battle of the Murgle Choke. And that's what we have here on the wiki. Now, one of the things that I do very much remember is these were kind of modularly put together. So they were kind of tough little ships. The drawback is, technically they didn't have an actual hangar. They had docking ports that we could actually put stuff in here. So somewhere in here, somebody had written in that they had a hangar, but I don't really remember them having a hangar because of their modular design. They were tough little ships, but they just did not have a space for the hangar. That's my personal recollection. And honestly, uh, movie wise, we only had a couple models, and it's hard to think of it in today's day and age. But much like with Star Trek, we had to make the models in order to get all this stuff out there, and kind of afterthoughts or whatever else became harder to put into a lot of the movies, mainly because if we didn't have a model for it, we just couldn't do it. Today, it's a lot easier with the CGI, so we can add this stuff in there in the background. And as a picket line, which is actually described in the Imperial source book, you're going to have your two, maybe three Star Destroyers, and then you're going to have various other ships. Most notably, yes, you'll have your Lancer class frigates out there, and that's supposed to be the standard Imperial kind of fleet that you're going to find. So you will have an admiral with every fleet, and then you're going to have a bunch of captains and lower ranks in command of smaller ships. But we lose that in the movies mainly because we just don't have the models for it. And George Lucas was always one to sit here and say for the toy companies or for others, this is the stuff that was seen off screen. So he was willing to very adamantly, let's expand the universe. This is all things that I just couldn't show here because he's just concentrating on the couple of characters: Leia, Luke, Han, Chewie, 3PO, R2, and then we get Lando in there as well. But still, the universe being as vast as it is, and bringing in these big starfighters or starships, do need that picket line. Very much like today's Navy, we do have these extra ships. Now, some fleets are going to be larger than others, depending on the scope of the fleet and everything else, but that is some of the things I do remember very vividly from the source book itself. But with that being said, let's get into our um, D6 stats here and go from there. Okay, so looking at our Lancer class frigate here, this is a quad drive yards Lancer class frigate for the Empire during the Rebellion era. Now, this comes to us from the Imperial source book and the Thrawn trilogy source book as well. We also have the Essential Guide to Vehicles and Vessels going from there. So, this is an anti-starfighter screening vessel, capital scale, 250 meters long. Let's see, we have a crew of 810 with 40 gunners, a skeleton crew of 375, can operate this vessel with a plus 10 difficulty roll. All right, having an astrogation, our typical crew skills would be an astrogation of 3D plus 2, capital ship piloting 3D plus 2. Capital shields, ship shields is 4D. Starship gunnery is 4D. So we do have enough room on here for 40 passengers, typically going to be troops. We have a cargo capacity of 300 metric tons and enough consumables for about 1 week. All right. Hyperdrive is going to be at times 2 with a backup hyperdrive of times 15. We do have a nav computer on board. The maneuverability for this is only a 1D, so not the most maneuverable ship in the fleet. Space-wise, it is at a 4. Keep in mind, I believe a Y-wing was doing a space speed of 7, a hull of 4D, and shields of 2D plus 2. So again, it is a resilient ship. Being at a 4D, it's not the most resilient, but it is fairly resilient. The shields are a little bit above what we would consider our galactic standard of being a 2D. All right, sensor wise, passively we can scan out to 3.5 kilometers. Actively we can scan out to 6 kilometers. Both of those are at a 1D bonus to our skill roll. We have an active search out to 10 kilometers with a 2D skill bonus, and a focus out to 300 meters with a 2D plus 2 skill bonus. All right, and weapon wise, we only have 20 quad laser cannons, but that's fairly decent in all regards. So we do have 5 in our front, 5 on our left, 5 on the right, and 5 on our rear arc. So covering all arcs of the ship, keeping it for fairly good fighter screening. Of course, those are going to be at starfighter scale with a fire control of 4D, so that does ensure a fairly good two-hit capability. Regrettably, each one of these is only going to have a 4D for damage. So, not the most amount of damage, but there again, once you start getting in close and you have 5 in each arc or whatever, that does start making things a little bit more complicated. And fairly deadly for a lot of fighter pilots. So, with that being said, that is our ship today. It is an interesting little ship, nice little design, 250 meters long. Maybe we can pick it up on surplus for a song and a dance, especially once we get into the New Republic era. Um, who knows? Who knows who might have them, or what pirate outfits may have been able to capture a couple of these, either when they were in a mothball state or captured them from the Empire themselves. So, with that being said, thank you so very much for joining me today. It's always wonderful having you here. I hope you're doing well, and I'll see you in the next video.